Who's this guy? Does it move in? You just bringing anybody in now these? Yeah. Good. I was just thinking about you today. So yeah, well, I think it was. Well, good to see you. I don't know why it's automatically putting on that frame. All right. Well, we should be in good order. It's good to be with everybody. We're going to keep looking at the book of Isaiah tonight. We started looking last week at this microcosm of the book of Isaiah. And if you've read any of the prophets, they're always kind of this way where curses and blessings are intermingled. It's not like, the first half is curses and then the blessings, would come later. He'll just flow from curses straight into blessings and then back to talking about curses and then back to talking about blessings. And, it's a loving father who's reminding his son, this is going to be really hard. You're rebelling against me. You've done everything I told you not to do. But I will relent when you repent, and then talk. But the other thing to think about, and what I want you to consider, is that Isaiah is prophesying over a long stretch of time, and so this is not, you and I have the privilege of reading through this. But these are separate oracles that are given. And, when he wrote these down, it's not like he said, this is the date when such and such was said. But think about over a lifetime, over a whole ministry. This is the kinds of things that were being said. These are the things he was telling Israel. And so you can imagine each of these as sermons that are being given with, the weighty part and then the promises. And, that was given to a people. And, maybe it was maybe one chapter was a sermon or something like that. But I want to look a little bit at Isaiah, just a couple of insights into Isaiah's public ministry. The first, there's not a lot. We don't know much about Isaiah, but he's mentioned in the New Testament. He was obviously a prophet to Israel. In chapter 1, it says that he was the son of Amos, and that he was prophesying in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. So that's his reign. Really, he started prophesying when Uzziah died. And then his prophetic ministry went all the way through the reign of King Hezekiah. But we don't know much about him. And there's a couple little insights into his ministry. In chapter 7, he goes to King Ahaz. And in a little while, we're going to look at that. So I'm not going to spend much time on this. But chapter 7, it's interesting. This is one of those passages where he's simultaneously giving a promise to Ahaz and a sign of God's good favor that would be immediate for them, and it's a prophecy that concerned Jesus as well, that was going to be delayed by several hundred years, namely that of a virgin birth. This chapters 7 and 8 kind of help you to see here's a real man going to this real king, and he's having a conversation with him. A lot of the rest of the time, you just see these long, sections, these long orations that are, basically just a monologue, and it's God talking. Well, really, that's Isaiah relaying God's words to somebody. And in chapters 7 and 8, you see he's sent to Ahaz. God had a word for King Ahaz. And so that's what that is. Chapter 20 is interesting. Go to chapter 20. You can imagine, if you think you've seen an eccentric preacher, or if you think you've seen a preacher that was really out there and just really bizarre, Isaiah was even more so what God had him do. It says, in the year, this is Isaiah 20, in the year that the commander-in-chief who was sent by Sargon, the king of Assyria, came to Ashdod and fought against it and captured it, at that time the Lord spoke by Isaiah the son of Amos, saying, see how there's a timestamp on this one? This statement was said in this particular year. And God said to his prophet, go and loose the sackcloth from your waist and take off your sandals from your feet. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. I would hope that there was at least one of those loincloths. That'd be a real distracting sermon. But he took off his cloak. He, like when Jesus was stripped down. And I imagine he probably had a loincloth, and that may have been it. And he's walking about. You see this man that seems crazy. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Well, he did so, walking naked and barefoot. And the Lord said, as my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot for 3 years. So think about this. 3 years. That's like half the time that I've been in Kingfisher. That's how long. That's a long time to be just walking around in a loincloth. All right. It says he's naked. Maybe he was, I don't know. Maybe this was all the way. 3 years of this. Why? It was a sign and a portent against Egypt and Cush. So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptian captives and the Cushite exiles, both the young and the old, naked and barefoot. Oh, here we go. With buttocks uncovered, the nakedness of Egypt. What do you think about that? That's one way to make a message. I remember when I was in school, they said, we had to read this book called Made to Stick, and it was about preaching messages that are that people can remember. And I didn't actually agree with. The longer I've been in ministry, the less I agree with the premise. I can remember about 2 sermons in my entire life. And yet the best sermons that I may not remember all the details, they are what formed my thinking and shaped my brain and made me have a Christian worldview. And it's just deeper than a sermon that you'd remember. But anyways, we had to read that book, and that's what they said. You need to have lots of stories. And, well, I would imagine that this was a story. This was a message that would stick. You're not going to forget that one. And 3 years he walked around naked. And then they shall be dismayed and ashamed because of Cush their hope and of Egypt their boast. And the inhabitants of this coastland will say in that day, behold, This is what has happened to those in whom we hoped and to whom we fled for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. And we, how shall we escape? Now, here's the thing that strikes me. Isaiah is the messenger of God. He's obedient to God. And he's doing this thing that's culturally inappropriate, strange. He's doing it totally in obedience to God. And, do you think that maybe his wife would have said, "Hon, no, you're not. You're not showing up to church that way"? Do you think that might have happened? Isaiah chapter 7 and 8, Isaiah was married. And Isaiah had children. And his wife was a part of this with him. What I'm showing you is, here's a real man that was brought low. He was hated, but he was preaching God's word, and he was doing what needed to be done to get the message to the people in obedience to God. Chapters 37 to 39, you see a little bit more in specific. And it's just in particular when King Hezekiah is in a bind, and he calls for Isaiah, and he needs Isaiah's help, and Isaiah comes and gives him instructions from the Lord. And again, you just see that. But beyond that, there's not Isaiah himself. You don't see much of him. I wanted to start class this way, just so that you know, so that you're thinking of these different statements, these orations, as coming from a real man who was flesh and blood. He had a wife. He had children. He was walking around 3 years naked, and he was doing it in obedience to God. He was delivering a word that got him ridiculed and rebuked. Speaking the truth and doing the work of God was not something that, it wasn't something fluffy. It was hard. It was gritty, and he did it. And we need to do the same. Thank God that he doesn't give some of those same instructions as he did. But any comments on that? Yeah. Again, there's another amazingly profound, real, Hosea, go marry Gomer. God had his prophets do some crazy things and say some hard things, but they did it. They did it in obedience to God. And we get offended today so easily. Somebody just rubs us the wrong way. And we say, "Well, you sure stepped on my toes." Well, just imagine the prophet that's naked, and he's telling you, every one of you is going to be taken out of here naked because you are idolaters. And that's his message for 3 years. Imagine that. So we're soft. And I think the prophets and getting into the prophets helps us to see, man, I guess I've not seen anything yet, right? I ought to be able to take a little bit more. I ought to be able to be boldly confronted and called out and challenged.
I was just going to ask you, how comfortable are we as Christians? I mean, even like when we're trying to talk to someone, how comfortable are we? Because if you think about his environment, every day being naked where he was at, walking barefoot,
right,
where he was at,
be very uncomfortable.
He did not have a comfortable day until he got in the building.
No. Yeah. And who was it that had to lie on his back for like 600 days? Which prophet was it? Was it Ezekiel? One of the other prophets, he had to just lie still for like 600 days. And, God was doing these as signs. It was a bigger message. And these men sacrificed a great deal in obedience. But you're exactly right. Comfort was lost on this. You know. Okay. So tonight I want to talk about the two major crises that happened in the time that Isaiah is prophesying. The two major crises concerning Judah. The first being when Syria and Israel joined forces against Judah, and then the second when Assyria was joining forces against Judah. And the main thing that I want for us to draw out of this is to stop and consider, who is it that you really trust? Let's just have a brief discussion. What is the state of affairs in American politics?
Rubbish.
Rubbish. Yep.
Right.
Garbage. Yep.
Rubbish is way worse than garbage.
Yes. Dung.
Yes.
Yes. Sure. Yeah. The scrapings of a burnt pan. Okay. Any other elaborations on that?
Constant disagreements.
Constant fighting. Yep. Manipulations. What happened today? What happened today at was there a zombie apocalypse? That's not politics. I get, well, you know what? Maybe it is. But the silliness there, and people believe it. It's like, seriously? We're believing this? We're buying this stuff? Come on. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I see your question. On neither side of the aisle. I don't care what public affiliation you are. I couldn't trust you any further than I could throw you.
Right. It doesn't matter which side you're on, you're not trustworthy.
Yeah.
But he's a Republican. Brian, come on, man. He's a Republican. Are you saying that Republicans do bad stuff? No chance.
That's just like I said, God's my president,
Yeah.
and my governor, and my...
He's everything. Well, you know what? Biden is your president, but
Yeah, I know.
but it's like a spanking. It's like a big spanking from God. Maybe better would be a whip. But the same. It doesn't matter. Was it peaceable during was it peaceable during the Trump years? Was it peace here? Was it good? Maybe in some, maybe we could say fiscally we were better off. But I'm sorry, it's a disaster. And the thing that the scriptures teach over and over again is God has control over the authorities and who they are. God will raise up a president, and he'll put a president out of office. God will do that. And who do we trust within it? If God's raising up the person that that we want, the person we think would be better than the other person, if God's raising him up, are we trusting the God who's doing the raising up, or are we trusting this person? Are we trusting God, or are we trusting a party? And so much stock so often is put into those that are in positions of authority. And really, that was Judah's problem. That was Judah's problem. Was God is out here, sovereign God over the universe. And there's a threat from Assyria and from Syria and Israel, Samaria, the capital of Israel. There's a threat from them. It's a real threat. These are two powerful armies comparatively, and they are knocking on your door. They're trying to force you into an alignment with them against Assyria. And what do? Who do you trust? Where do you go to? Do you trust Assyria? You know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So let me show you this on the map. I think I showed this last time, but here's Judah, just this little bitty thing right here. Here's Israel, right? This is the northern 10 tribes, and then Syria. And the capital right here is Damascus. And so you've got Damascus here and Samaria here. And so those are the two heads of these nations. And they are joining forces against Judah. All right? And they are pressured by Assyria. And they want a third guy on their side. And so, but Judah doesn't want to be in tandem with these guys. And so he says, well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So Assyria is the enemy of Syria and Israel. Well, maybe then I'll go get some help from Assyria. And that causes problems. He ends up having to pay a massive tribute to the king of Assyria because of this. So let's read a couple of these scriptures. Chapter 7 is where this conversation starts. Isaiah chapter 7. Does somebody want to start reading in verse 1?
Now it came about in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, and that Rezin, the king of Amram, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not conquer it. When it was reported to the house of David, saying, the Arameans have camped in Ephraim, his heart and the hearts of his people shook, as the trees of the forest shake with the wind. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, go out now to meet Ahaz, you and your son Shear-Jashub, and the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the fuller's field. And say to him, take care and be calm, have no fear, and do not be faint-hearted because of these two stubs of smoldering firebrands, on account of the fierce anger of Rezin and Amram and the sons of Remaliah. Because Amram with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah has planned evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrorize it, and make for ourselves a breach in it, its walls, and set up the son of Tabeel as king in the midst of it. Thus says the Lord God, it shall not stand, nor shall it come to pass. For the head of Amram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. Now within another 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered, so that it is no longer a people. And the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you will not believe, you surely shall not last.
Okay, thank you. So these threats are there, and King Ahaz is getting scared about this. So God sends Isaiah, and what's Isaiah's message? I know there's a lot of names and, interesting language there. What's the gist of Isaiah's message to Ahaz? Be calm. Why should you be calm?
It says in 65 years Ephraim will be broken, which is going to end up being Samaria.
Yeah, these present threats are present threats only. When the present threat is there, it doesn't give us jurisdiction to align ourselves with wicked people or to abandon our faith in God. It's a present threat, and it's a present threat only because it will be taken care of by God. If you go over to the parallel account in the Kings, you see actually what Ahaz did. So go to 2 Kings 16. Second Kings 16, 1 through 9. In the 7th year of Pekah, so this is the king that is coming against them, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz the son of Jotham, king of Judah, began to reign. I just wish that it would say in the 17th year of Pekah, Ahaz started to reign. That makes it a lot easier for me. Once you start saying Pekah, the son of Remaliah, in the land of Habubadah, like I'm out and I've lost. I've got to go read it 4 times to figure out, what's being said here. So it's complex language, but it's given these dates or these figures, these exact things, because this is historically important. But Ahaz, so he's 20 years old. Well, that probably has a part to play here. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord God, as his father David had done. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He even burned his son as an offering, according to the despicable practices of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. And he sacrificed and made offerings on the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. So he's an idolater. He's a pagan. He's then Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel. And by the way, I want you to pay attention to his character. Pay attention to the character of Ahaz now, because in a moment we're going to read something in Isaiah 7 that seems like piety on the part of Ahaz. You think, oh, well, he's really a good guy. Well, when you read his character into it, you'll know, no, this is insincerity. And that's a big part. Because in Isaiah 7, he seems pious, and then Isaiah gets angry at his pious reaction. You think, why are you angry? Well, because it wasn't pious. It was hypocritical. It was insincerity. It was he was a liar. He sacrificed his kid. He gave his kid to a demon god, and he has not worshipped God. So Rezin, king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel. So Rezin is in Damascus. Pekah is in Samaria. And they came up to wage war on Jerusalem, and they besieged Ahaz, but could not conquer him. At that time, Rezin, the king of Syria, recovered Elath for Syria, and drove the men of Judah from Elath. And the Edomites came to Elath, where they dwell to this day. So Ahaz sent messengers. So here's what he does. Now, you don't see the whole exchange here with Isaiah, but we know what Isaiah had said. God had come to Ahaz through Isaiah and had said to him, don't worry, don't fear. These threats are immediate, but they'll be eliminated. They're going to be gone. Well, here you see Ahaz, notice what it says. The threat's here. The historical account says, here's what he did. So Isaiah's here saying, God has a message for you. Trust him. And what does Ahaz do? Well, Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the hand of the king of Syria and from the hand of the king of Israel who are attacking me. Ahaz also took the silver and gold that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and sent a present to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria listened to him. The king of Assyria marched up against Damascus and took it, carrying its people captive to Kir, and he killed Rezin. So think about this. God had said that Rezin and Pekah are going to be taken care of. God had told Ahaz, trust in me. Ahaz trusted rather in Assyria. So God used Assyria to fulfill the promise of killing and taking care of these immediate threats. But now there's going to be problems because he trusted in Assyria rather than trusting in God. It's a complicated story. But when we choose to do it our way rather than God's way, what a mess it makes. And all through the prophecy of Isaiah, this, he said to Assyria, I'm your son and I'm your servant. I'll do whatever you want. Well, in the Kings, he has to pay a huge tribute. He's carrying off all this gold to Assyria. Assyria's not going to send his forces to take care of these threats on Judah without payment. And so he's going to be paid heftily. But then later on, Assyria is going to be a problem, and they're going to be a constant issue for Israel. So let's look at the map again. Assyria comes, and he starts taking care of the problems here in Syria. So just remember, Syria and Assyria are two totally different things. Think of, just always when you think of Syria is, it's just right there. When Miranda and I went to Israel, we were right there on the border. We could see it. But Assyria is far east. Okay. Any questions on that so far?
Well, you think about it, you see so many parallels to today's society. You talk about Ahaz. He was wicked.
Yep.
He was hypocritical. Here, takes off the Syrians, and then doing his sons right, they come and attack Jerusalem.
Right.
But look what God does. These people, Israel, is going to disappear shortly, 721. Judah's going to last a little bit longer. And Ahaz dies, and who takes over? Hezekiah. Probably the most righteous king since David.
Mm-hmm.
So God, even in their sin, God gave them hope.
Right.
God tried to rescue them. God bent a little backwards to help them.
Right.
And
exactly.
And because Hezekiah's righteousness, Assyria's going in and attack, and they're defeated. Or they die out, before the war. But is there parallels today?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Are we, the government we have, is it what we deserve or what we need? I think it's what we deserve.
Right.
As a nation. Because God gave up on us.
Yeah, I don't think so.
He didn't give up on Judah. He just kept going back and helping them. And so you have this unrighteous king, Ahaz, but then they're blessed by Hezekiah.
Yeah, right. And then the tragedy on Hezekiah's part is then Hezekiah becomes a fool. Yeah. How many of the kings, so God raises up Hezekiah, and so this threat of Assyria, because Hezekiah trusts in God, then that threat of Assyria is taken care of. But then later on, so the idolatry problem in Israel has not been taken care of. You may have a righteous king, you may have a Hezekiah who's worshiping righteously, but God's people are still living in sin, and Babylon sends envoys to Hezekiah to look at all his stuff, and Hezekiah showboats. He says, "Look at everything I got. Look at all these amazing things that I got." And they're spying out. They're thinking, man, we want that stuff. What you got, we want it. So they're thinking long game. They're thinking we're going to come back and we're going to get all this stuff. And guess what? They did. God then is going to send Isaiah to Hezekiah to say, you were so foolish here. You and your pride, showing off all your riches, all your glory. Where's your trust? Who do you trust in? When Hezekiah trusted in the Lord took care of the enemy. When Hezekiah trusted in money, the enemy came right in and took the people. And one of the strangest passages in all the Bible is here between it's later on, chapter 39 and following, concerning Babylon, when Isaiah says to Hezekiah, Judah is going to be taken off to Babylon, and he says, well, just so long as it doesn't happen in my lifetime, what's it to me? He says, your sons are going to be eunuchs in a foreign king's house. And he says, well, just so long as it happens in their land. So I always think it's so weird. You got this righteous king who acts so great, and then he just does the dumbest thing you could ever imagine. And that's kind of like us, isn't it?
Well, the moral decay of the country was still there. God blessed him with a righteous man.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, one man can't do it.
No.
And did the majority rub off on him? Did the moral decay?
Yeah, he certainly liked that money. I mean, he certainly liked those riches. He got, pride is the thing, right? It's finally made it to this position, to this status, and then, but I think I want to stop there because the discussion on Assyria is, it's, as you can see, it's 4 chapters long, and part of it's in chapter 30 as well. And so I think we'll just hold off on Assyria till next week. But as you can see, to me it's interesting that the threats, the threats are immediately here, and then they're here, and then they're here. They just keep getting further, and then ultimately the furthest threat is going to be the one that takes them. Maybe sometimes the threats that are the furthest off, that that seem the most unlikely. That wouldn't happen. That could never happen. But it is what happened. So let's stop there, and we'll pick up next week.